Bonjour. Welcome to Wahsa Distance Education Center's radio Zoom classes. This is MEL3E, grade 11 workplace math, and I am the teacher, Bronwyn Slate. If you'd like to participate live today, you can call the Wahsa studio at 1-800-465-7144 or 737-4017. You're welcome to listen on the radio at 91.9 FM and also on the television at Bell Express View Channel 972. You can always join me live through the Zoom link, which is available from me and also your DEC. Our classes are scheduled Monday through Thursday from 9 till 10 in the morning. And we are now in our 8th week of our 9-week course. This is our last week of new material. So with only 1 week left of new material and next week being review week, you should be submitting work for marking. Remember, June 10th is the last day to submit all of your work to be graded. So that is not this Friday, but next Friday. A reminder that the support questions are not for marking. They are practice problems. They have the pencil icon on them. So you can decide which ones and how many of them to do. If you're understanding a concept, you're having no problems with it, feel free to skip questions. You don't have to do them all just because they're there. But if you do need more practice, let me know, and I'm happy to send you more practice. The key questions, however, the ones with the little key icon, are the ones to submit for grading. So please do all of these questions. You need to show your work, all of your steps in your thinking. This way I can give you the most credit for your understanding. If you make a mistake, which happens all the time, I make mistakes, you see me do it, and you just write down the answer, I don't know where the mistake was. I don't know if you completely don't understand what it is that you're doing, or if you just made a slip of a number. So please show me all your work so I can give you credit for as much understanding as possible. And also this way, if you are making a mistake that is a conceptual error, you just don't understand something, it gives me information about what you don't understand so that I can actually help you. The more information, the better. Then there are 3 different ways to submit your work for marking. The first method is to scan and send your work electronically. So if you scan your completed work through the iPhone Notes app or the Android Google Drive app, then you can send it to me. They both have fairly straightforward scan functions. If you want me to walk you through that, no problem, I'm happy to do so. If you don't have a smartphone or that doesn't work for you and you just want to take a picture, that is fine too. They're just a little bit larger files and can be a little bit trickier to send, but no worries. Then you can send it to me either through email at studentwork@nnec.on.ca and CC it to bronwyn.slate@nnec.on.ca, or you can send it to me through Facebook Messenger, where my name is B. Slate Wahsa. The second method is to drop it off in Sioux Lookout. We have an outdoor mailbox at our location, 74 Front Street. We are the bright red building next to the post office, and we have a small white mailbox next to our side entrance. So you can just put it in there at any point, and I will get it over the course of the day or so. Then the third method is to hand it into your DEC. Then your DEC can either send it through the Express or fax it to 807-737-1732 or toll-free fax to 1-800-463-7852. If you'd like to connect with me on social media, both my Facebook and my YouTube channel are under the name B. Slate Wahsa. So if you want to friend me or subscribe to my YouTube channel, you'll get notifications when I upload our classes. All of our radio Zoom classes are recorded and I upload them to YouTube within a couple of hours, or at the worst within the week. Sometimes life happens. There's also short videos on my YouTube channel that explain common errors or confusing concepts, which can be a really good place to go to first if you're struggling with something. So you can do a general Google search or a general internet search, but I might have addressed it already, which might address it exactly related to your course and the types of questions that you're dealing with, which might be more useful than just doing a general internet search. I'm always happy to put new videos on there. If you have anything that you're struggling with and you want me to put a video up there, just let me know and I can do that. Math is a really visual subject, so I strongly encourage you to access the videos. Either join me live through Zoom where you don't have to talk to me if you don't want to. If you just want to sit and watch, that is completely okay. I will not bother you. I understand it. But if that doesn't work for you and you want to, and you can't watch the replays on YouTube, let me know and I can send you a copy of our recordings so that you still have the full experience and are setting yourself up for the most success. So as always, if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me. I am trying to reach out to students who are active and have been handing me in work. But if you haven't been active for a while or you're just getting to doing your work now, please reach out directly to me so that I know where you're at and I can support you. My email address is bronwyn.slate@nnec.on.ca. Facebook is Wahsa. If you want to call me at the main office, it's 807-737-1488, and my extension is 2209. You can also call us toll free at 1-800-667-3703. Still the same extension, you'll get me. If you leave me a message, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. My office hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Though I teach the first hour, the last hour of my day, so that's not a good time to try to get a hold of me. Another reminder, I just need to say it over and over again these last few weeks. June 10th is your last day to submit work. So you need to get all of your work in, and then remember you also have a culminating assignment, a final project that once you are finished all of your work, I will give you that assignment. You don't have it yet. So you need to get everything else done so that you can get that, and that needs to be in by June 10th as well. So come on, get cracking. All right, today is lesson 18, planning a trip. Let's dive in. So our learning goals for this lesson is that at the end of this lesson, you'll be able to plan a road trip and you will understand the various costs associated with a road trip. So you've met this learning goal because you can plan a trip using Google Maps is the tool that we'll be using. You can determine distances involved in travel, and you can calculate the cost of accommodation, fuel, food, and entertainment while vacationing. All right, but let's first do brain activation, some mental math to get our brains working. So hopefully by this point, you realize that I am not an advocate for the mad math minutes that many of us experienced in elementary school. They were stressful. They didn't teach us our facts. They just sort of, if you knew them, you regurgitated them, great. If you didn't, you just had a really stressful, crappy time where you felt bad about yourself. So I think facts are important, but I think that learning strategies that you can apply in various situations are more useful than just being able to memorize them. It takes up less brain space and it's more powerful. So our question today is 724 divided by 12. And we're going to be doing partial quotients, which is similar, looks similar to long division, but isn't exactly the same. And it's more conceptual. It's more about understanding what's going on, whereas long division is just really feels like you're following steps. So we're going to set this question up like a long division question where we have 724 inside of our long division symbol, 12 on the outside, because that's what we're dividing into 724. But I extend my long division symbol down like a big 7 to keep myself organized, sort of show that how I'm organizing my information. You don't have to do that at all, but you can. So then what I like to do with partial quotients, what I'm doing is I'm thinking about what are friendly numbers of groups of 12 that I know are going to fit into 724. I do not need to figure out the most. I just need to figure out some. So 120, that's 10 groups of 12 is 120, and that is less than 704. So I know for certain that I have at least 10 groups. So I'm going to subtract that off of my 724 and get 604 because I've already dealt with those. That 120 things I've already divided into 10 groups of 12, so I don't need to do it anymore. So now I can see, well, I definitely can do it again, another 120, but I can do more than that. So I'm going to say, well, I know that if I double 120, I get 240. So that would be 20 groups. So I could do that again, but I can keep saying, well, if I triple 10 groups, so I get 30 groups, that's going to be 360. Okay, sure, that's going to fit still. Even if I quadruple 120, that's going to be 480. So let's do that. So I have 40 groups, because if I'm going to do 4 times 10 groups, it gives me 480 that I've dealt with. So that is still a lot. So 600 take away 400 is 200. And then 200 take away 80 is 120. So I have 124 is what I still have. Oh, but 124 is only one group, or sorry, 10 groups of 12, because that's going to be 120. So another 10 groups is going to fit. That's 120. So I'm only left with 4. And so I could do this in a couple of ways. So that's, I can't fit any more 12 groups in here. So I can say, all right, well, so that means that I have 10 plus 40 groups is 50 groups, plus 10 groups is 60 groups. So I have 60 groups, remainder 4 could be one way that I could think about it. I could also say, well, I have 4 out of 12. So I could say I have 60 groups and 4 12ths. Well, which I can simplify to 60 groups. 4 12ths is the same as 1/3. So 60 and 1/3. Or I could say 60, and I know that 1/3 is 0.3, repeating forever. So I could say 60.3, because I know that 1/3 is 0.3 repeated forever. So it's totally fine that if you do 60 and remainder 4, 60 and 4 12ths, 60 and 1/3, 60 and 60.33 are all true. They're all the same. They're the same thing, explained in different ways. And that's how you use partial quotients. So we're able to get some decimals or fractions. We didn't have a remainder of 0. We had something left over, and it was fairly easy to figure out based on this partial quotients, where we dealt with the friendly groups that we were able to break up into groups of. I love partial quotients. When I learned it, it made me so happy. I did not learn it until I was an adult and teaching other teachers how to teach math. So I wish I would have learned it in elementary school. I would have been so happy. Anyway, continuing on. All right, Mind Zone. What do we need to know for setting ourselves up for success in today's lesson? I wanted to talk about time zones today. So when we're talking about travel, in Canada, we have a lot of different time zones. So we can just travel within Canada in our same country. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different time zones that we can cross by just traveling within Canada. So understanding how they work a little bit is really helpful in order to plan a trip and understand what's going on. So first, a little tiny bit of history is that our time zones are based off of some now dead white dudes who lived in Europe, and they said this is where our time is all connected. It's all relative to this line, to this point. It is not in Canada, somewhere in Europe. I don't know where it is, but so this line is where everything is. So that's like our 0, because Earth is round. And so we had to, in order to compare our times, it's all relative to each other. In order to compare times, we needed to set where our 0 was on our number line on our world, because our world just goes around and around and around, right? So because much of our history, much of the people who were in power continue to be in power, but who historically have been in power and have defined our science and our math, have defined a lot of things, were white men in Europe. So they set 0 to be where they lived, And then everything is in relation to that. So that is the Coordinated Universal Time, UTC, is where we're all comparing to. So then we say then things are time zone. So we are in Sioux Lookout, and in most of our communities, we are in Central Time. And so depending on if it is daylight time or standard time, we are minus from that 0. We're -5 if it's daylight time, and we're -6 if it's standard time. So everything is in relation to that. I generally don't think about that all that much. I think about it in terms of relation to the places that I am comparing to within Canada. So I know that I have much family in Southern Ontario, so I know that they are 1 hour ahead. So I think about this is that the sun rises in the east, so east gets light before we do. So that is why they are earlier in the day than we are. Whereas in the west, it sets in the west, and so it takes longer. The day takes longer to get to the west, and they are later in the day than we are. So right now we are in daylight savings times. That's a whole nother conversation that we're not going to go into in terms of the fact that we change time, spring ahead and fall back. But most of Manitoba and this Northwestern Ontario, chunk of Northwestern Ontario, is in Central Time. And then Eastern Ontario, so most of the rest of Ontario and Quebec are Eastern time zone. And then the Maritimes are Atlantic time zone, so they are 2 hours ahead of us in Sioux Lookout, and Newfoundland is 2.5 hours ahead of us. Then if we're going west, then Saskatchewan and Alberta and a little bit of BC are an hour after us, and then the rest of BC is 2 hours after us. And then you can see in terms of to the north, those as well. So in this map, the colors continue up to show where all the time is the same time. And as you can see, it's sort of arbitrary. It's not like something that is really, it's not straight lines. We kind of decide about it. Somebody's decided makes sense. Anyway, so time zones are important to note because time is different depending on where you are in Canada. All right, so what is new? What are we talking about? When will you use this in real life? Well, we're developing skills to attack problems. So for this specifically, if we are going on a trip, we're going on vacation. Yay, summertime is coming up. People may be traveling. It's been a long time since many folks have traveled due to COVID-19, and things are potentially relaxing a little bit more, though it's still something we all need to be really cautious about. But people are making the decision to travel, to go visit family, friends, connections. But making those plans, setting yourself up for the most success. So we're developing the skills to be able to attack those problems of having to travel and what does that mean for making those plans. But also sometimes you're not just traveling for vacation. Maybe you're traveling for work. Maybe you're traveling for medical. There's lots of situations where you might need to be traveling, and being able to make those plans is setting you up for success. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to plan a trip. So what do we need to consider when we're planning a trip? So we need to travel. For today's lesson, we're talking about traveling by car. We're talking about a road trip. If we're going to, in future lessons, we're going to talk about traveling by plane and train and bus. But today we're just focusing on driving a car. So you need to decide about the traveling distance in terms of how far you're going, and what is that going to mean for your vehicle. So how far can you travel in a day? What is reasonable? If you were traveling somewhere that is multiple days, how many kilometers, how many hours a day can you do? What is reasonable? What is safe? Do you have kids or pets to consider, because they can't necessarily travel as long as adults? If you are traveling with a toddler or a baby, then really they need to be like every 2 hours or so, they need to get out of their car seat and move their bodies around a little bit. So if you're with a pet, with a dog, how often do you need to stop so that they can pee, so they don't pee in your car? These are things to consider Are you traveling overnight? Are you driving through the night? Do you have multiple drivers? Things like that are all things to consider. And is the goal to get to the final destination? Are you just trying to get there as fast as you can? Or is it to enjoy the journey? Are you going on a road trip and you're just going really slow and you're puttering about and maybe you're only traveling 4 hours a day, and you're stopping every hour to have picnics or to go swimming or to visit people, right? What is your goal? You want to consider this, or are you just trying to get through there as fast as you can so that you can get to the other end, so that you can get to where you're going? So you need to consider fuel cost, which we talked about. We'll talk about again. You need to consider accommodations, both on the road. Are you staying places along the road, along the trip? How long is it? And also at your final destination. You need to think about food. So how much does it cost to do breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks? You need to think about taxes, because taxes are different rates in different provinces, remember? So if you're planning that, you gotta consider that when you're looking at prices of things. Remember that taxes are different. And entertainment. So are you saving for admission costs? Are you going to go to the zoo? Are you going to go to a movie? Are you going to go to a museum? Are you going to a play? What are you doing? That's going to cost you to get in. And also souvenirs. Are you buying souvenirs? You want to budget that? You want to sort of plan? Are you spending hundreds of dollars just on stuff or not? What makes sense for you in your household? So for this lesson, for lesson 18, there are no support questions. So there's no practice problems. You're just your IEL book walks you through how to plan a trip using Google Maps. So that's what we're going to do in our lesson today. So we are going to take a trip together. So I decided that our trip we were going to take is from Sioux Lookout to Charlottetown in PEI. So we're going to drive on this blue line. This is a snapshot of Google Maps. We're going to drive down here, down to Sault Ste. Marie, and through Sudbury, through Ottawa, and then Montreal, Quebec City, and then through New Brunswick and Fredericton, and then over the bridge to Charlottetown. So that is about a 34-hour of driving time. So we need to remember that this is actually in the car moving, not just it being a day and a half and you're there. No, this is 34 hours. This is a day and a half of actual driving, which is not safe and healthy to do straight, unless you have like 4 drivers and people rotate and sleeping. So it's 3,196 kilometers of distance. So for our trip, I imagined us as a family of 4 with 2 adults and 2 kids, one who's 10 and one who's 15. The plan is to drive there over 5 days. So to get there, we're taking 5 days to drive there, and we are staying in Charlottetown for 4 days, and then we're driving back over 4 days. So driving back a little bit faster than we drove there. So that is the plan. So driving to Charlottetown. So this is a little bit of a plan in terms of how to structure your trip. So this is how your IEL booklet asks you to do it for the trip that you make up, I think. I can't remember if it tells if you're actually going. No, you're going to Calgary. There we go. You're going to Calgary. So I went the other direction. I went east instead of west. So in your IEL booklet, they don't give you these different stops. I decided these. So I know that I'm traveling over 4 days. So the first day I'm starting in Sioux Lookout. I'm going to Nipigon. By the end of the first day, I'm going to be in Nipigon. Second day, I'm driving to Sault Ste. Marie. By the end of the second day, that's where I'm going to stay. Then Montreal, then Edmonton, New Brunswick, and then at the end of the 5th day, I arrive in Charlottetown. But I need to figure out where I'm going to stop along the way. So we're going to go into Google Maps. I have no idea if there are other mapping programs that are really good. I don't know. Google Maps is what I use. I tried to do a general search, but then nothing came up that was like really obvious. If you use something else, I'm sure it's very similar. I just search up Google Maps I don't even remember that it's maps.google.com. I never remember that. I just search up Google Maps every time. So what we are going to do is we are making our plan to where we're going. So my map starts in Sioux Lookout because that's where I'm often starting from. And I'm going to say that Nipigon is our first step. So I'm saying that we're going to Nipigon, and we're going to get directions from Sioux Lookout to Nipigon. And it tells me that that is 5 hours and 17 minutes and 487 kilometers. So I think that is too far to drive just straight. To me, with a preteen and a teenager, 5 hours in the car is too much. So I'm going to say I'm going to add a destination, and I'm going to slide because I want Nipigon to be my ending destination. And I'm going to say, I think that we're going to stop at Uppsala. I know this route fairly well, so I don't, but you can just sort of look through it and pick on the map where you think you're going to stay or you're going to stop. So now you can see in my map, I have Sioux Lookout where I'm starting, and Uppsala, they show me here, and then I'm going to stop in Nipigon. Now, the thing is that I still look and it still tells me it's 5 hours and 23 minutes and 487 kilometers because it's telling me from the start to the end. So what I need to do is I click on this details button. Here they now say Sioux Lookout is where I'm starting. And then it's 2 hours and 46 minutes, which is 251 kilometers to drive to Uppsala. So this number here, this is the information that we're looking for here to get to where we're going so that we can plan our trip. So I'm going to go back to my tracking sheet and I'm going to say, okay, so I'm going from Sioux Lookout to Uppsala. And the distance between the two communities, so from Sioux Lookout to Uppsala, it was 251 kilometers. So the traveling time between the two communities, so between Sioux Lookout and Uppsala, it was 2 hours, and this is one I always forget, 2 hours and 46 minutes. So we're just going to say 2 hours, and we're going to say 45 minutes. We're going to round to the nearest quarter hour, which is what your IL booklet talks about doing. So the daily distance traveled and the number of hours traveled isn't really relevant because this is the total. We're talking about the total, whereas here we're just talking about the parts. So now to go from Uppsala to Nipigon, we look and we say, okay, we look here. And we see, okay, so to go from Uppsala to Nipigon, it's 2 hours and 37 minutes, which is 36 kilometers. So the distance from Uppsala to Nipigon is 236 kilometers, which was 2 hours and said 37 minutes. So I'm just going to say 30 minutes. It's all good. We're rounding, right? So then for the end of day one, what is the daily distance traveled? How far do we go in total? So we're adding those two together. So that is 487 kilometers was the full travel distance at the end of day one. And the total time, the number of hours. So if we do 2 hours plus 2 hours is 4 hours, 45 minutes plus 30 minutes. Well, if I take 15 minutes from my 30 minutes to add it to my 45 minutes, that's another hour. So I'm at 5 hours and 15 minutes left. So that's how long it takes to go from Sioux Lookout to Nipigon. Great. Okay, so now I need to plan to go from Nipigon to Sault Ste. Marie because that's my next stopping point that I planned. So I'm going to add another destination and I'm going to type in Sault Ste. Marie. And so that it's added on my map. You can see, okay, so that's a fairly long chunk. I go down and I say, okay, so from Nipigon to Sault Ste. Marie is 6 hours and 23 minutes. Okay, so I could stop twice in that time. I could stop once. For the sake of our time, I'm just going to decide that we're going to stop once. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to look and be like, okay, where's somewhere that looks kind of halfway-ish? So to me, it looks like White River and Wawa look like two places that are kind of halfway between. I'm going to say Wawa because I'm going to say that it's better to do more driving first thing and then stop, and then less driving after our first stop, after our stop. Again, you could put in more stops. For the sake of time, I'm just putting in one stop. So Wawa, and remember we want to change our order so that we're going from Nipigon to Wawa to Sault Ste. Marie, because otherwise we would do Nipigon, we would drive all the way to Sault Ste. Marie and then back to Wawa. So we want to rearrange that. So then I go back to my details and I look, okay, so from Nipigon, these are telling you how to actually do it, right? We don't really care right now about how to actually drive it. We're just looking at the travel time. So from Nipigon to Wawa, it's 3 hours and 57 minutes. So 4 hours and 365 kilometers. So going back to my tracking sheet, and I'm just going to say Wawa to where I'm going. So it was 4 hours, that I remember. And it is 365 kilometers. So that's going from Nipigon to Wawa. This is why doing this by hand and not having to bounce back and forth is kind of helpful, because it can be hard to remember. My brain just goes really quickly. Then to go from Wawa to Sault Ste. Marie, it's 2.5 hours and 227 kilometers. 227 kilometers and 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 30 minutes. So then the end of day 2, we add our kilometers together. So 300 plus 200 is 500, 60 plus 20 is 80, 5 plus 7 is 12. So 65 plus 27 is going to be 92. So 592 kilometers. And our travel time, so 4 hours plus 2 hours and 30 minutes is going to be 6 hours and 30 minutes. Again, you could plan realistically. I probably would plan more than one stop, but for the sake of our planning time, and that's totally fine. You don't have to. Driving 6 hours and 30 minutes is a lot for just doing in one go. So I would expect you to have at least one stop. But you can decide how many. You don't need to have a stop every half an hour. You can have 1 or 2 stops over the course of the day is probably realistic. Then we continue the same thing. So our next plan, I thought that Montreal was a good place. So Montreal, to get to Montreal, looking at a destination. So to go from Sault Ste. Marie to Montreal is 10 hours and 36 minutes. So that's a long time. That's a long stretch. So that we have to do 2 stops in there. And I'm going to say North Bay. Again, I know this area pretty well, this route pretty well. So, and I'm going to say Canada, which is outside of Ottawa on this side. So then we can look, we can say, okay, I picked those 2 places. So now our list is getting kind of long. So if I go from Sault Ste. Marie to North Bay, that's 4 hours and 52 minutes. Still a long trip, but okay. And then from North Bay to Canada is 3 hours and 38 minutes. And then from Canada to Montreal is 2 hours and 19 minutes. So that's a short bit at the end. So because my one is so long at the beginning, I might choose to do something different. I might be like, that doesn't seem like a really good plan. So maybe instead of North Bay, I might do Sudbury and change it so that I go, instead of North Bay, I decided that was too long. So I go to Sudbury, and then instead of Canada, I'm going to say Renfrew. See how I feel about that combination. The other thing is that you don't have to do this whole trip. So our trip is getting pretty long, and so it's getting harder to sort of read our information. So I'm going to remove some early things. We already planned those. I'm going to remove our early days and just stick with this day. So that I'm only looking at day 3, just because it was getting pretty squishy. So from Sault Ste. Marie to Sudbury is 3.5 hours. From Sudbury to Renfrew is 4.5 hours. And from Renfrew to Montreal is 3 hours. That feels like a little bit of a better split over the course of my day. So I'm just going to leave it at that. So to get from Sault Ste. Marie to Sudbury is 3.5 hours, which is 310 kilometers. Oops. So Sudbury, Ontario was 310 kilometers, which was 3 hours, 3.5 hours. And then from Sudbury to Renfrew, Ontario was 4 hours. Remember that much. And then from Renfrew to Montreal was 3 hours. Didn't remember the kilometers, but I did remember the time. So, that's not what I wanted to do. To go from Sudbury to Renfrew was 4.5 hours, and that's 396 kilometers, 396 kilometers and 290. I'm just going to round. That's fine. We're estimating. So I'm going to say 400 kilometers and 290 kilometers. 400 kilometers and 290 kilometers. And this was 4 hours and 30 minutes, not just 4 hours. So in the end of day 3, so I have 310 plus 290. So that 10 I'm just going to think about is here, and that's like 300. So I have 300, 300 and 400. So that's 3 and 4 is 700 plus another 300 is 1,000. So that's 1,000 kilometers. That's a long driving day, twice the distance than the 2 days before. And the driving time, so another 30 minutes is another hour. So instead of 3 hours, I'm gonna say 4 hours, and 4 hours is 8 hours, plus 3 hours is 11 hours. So you might want to do it differently than how I did it, but this is the way that I did it. And then we can continue with the other days. We don't have time to do them all, so we continue doing the same idea, tracking it out. Then when we're driving back, we do the same idea. Where we're starting from, I said that it was only going to be, I think it said 4 days. Anyway, you go back and you plan it on your way back. So then what is the total distance to travel from Sioux Lookout to Charlottetown and back? So we had all those lists, right? Like we've tracked it so we can add it all up in total. What I'm going to do, because of time, I'm just going to clear these out, and I'm just going to put the whole thing in. So you can check it with the whole thing and say Sioux Lookout to Charlottetown. Now, Prince Edward Island. And they're saying, it's saying that it takes us a slightly different route. Took us this route, so I'm just going to drag it to be the route that I wanted us to go. So they're taking it to 3,228 kilometers. So one way is 3,228 kilometers. So that means there and back. Each times that by 2. 3,228 kilometers times 2. So 3,220 kilometers is close to 330, so that means that 3,000 times 2 is 6,000, 200 times 2 is 400, 30 times 2 is 60. So it's approximately 6,460 kilometers to drive there and back. So then for your average fuel consumption, so what is the average cost of gas? So I found the averages. I found the gas in the 4 different provinces that we're driving through. These are the average costs. And so then I was just like, okay, if I just do it in average, if I don't do each one, if I don't decide how much I'm driving in each different place, and I just think about sort of on average, what am I doing? So I'm going to add my 4 gas amounts together. So, because they range, divide that by 4. That I didn't actually have to my answer, divided by 4. So on average, it's about $1.51 between over the whole trip. $1.51 per liter is going to be the cost of gas. So if we're traveling 6,430 kilometers in total. That's not including like little day trips or whatever, but just our general travel time. We're going in this, I decided this Chevrolet Trailblazer, which has 7.6 liters per 100 kilometers. So that means that how much gas did we consume? So fuel consumed, we figure out first. So we do our total number of kilometers, 6,430 times our fuel consumption rate, which is 7.6 liters per 100 kilometers. So if we're going to calculate that, so 6,430 times 7.6 divided by 100 is equal to 488.68. So that's how much fuel, how many liters of fuel we've consumed. So then for the cost, we do 488.86 times $1.51 per liter. $68, not 86. Sorry, I felt like that was wrong. It's 1.51. So it's going to cost us about $737.91. So that's how much you can plan on spending on gas just for the travel time. Then you need to think about accommodations. So what you're going to do is you're going to look up online. You're going to look up Nipigon. You're going to find a place to stay. Sault Ste. Marie, Montreal, Edmonton, you're going to find a place to stay. So I'm not going to do that just for the sake of time. We're not going to look up. So I'm going to say, okay, Nipigon, we're going to stay at Best Sleep, making it up. Hotel, and the cost is $69.99 per night. So to figure out the taxes, this is in Ontario. So $69.99 times Ontario tax, which is 13%. So 13%. And then we know what the total cost per night is. You don't make it up. I just did that for the sake of time. You look it up. So then the same thing for Sault Ste. Marie. Say that we're going to stay at the Days Inn. Sault Ste. Marie, it is $84.95 per night. So that is still in Ontario. So it's still times 13%. In Montreal, we're staying at French Hotel. I don't know French, so I can't make up a name that's in French. And here it's going to be, it's in Montreal. Montreal is a city, so I'm going to say that it's $113.40 per night. All these places we're only staying one night. So Quebec, the taxes is 7.5%. So we do 113.40 times 7.5%. And then at Edmonton, we're staying in cute B&B. And that is $94.60 per night. We're assuming that you're staying all in one room and you make it work to save money. Kids are small enough that they probably can make a deal. They might be grumpy about it, but they'll survive. Probably don't want them in a separate room. And in New Brunswick, the HST is 15%. I made a mistake. So in Ontario, we have HST. In New Brunswick, we have HST. In Quebec, we don't have HST. We have PST, which means we need to add GST as well. So in here, we need to do 113.40 times 7.5, and we need to do 113 times 5%. So let's do that one to figure out what the answer would be for one of them. So in Montreal, we do $113.40 is our rate times 0.075. So that means that that tax is $8.51. So that is the PST. Then we need to do the GST as well. So we do $113.40 times 0.05, which is $5.67. So our total is going to be $113.40 plus $8.51 plus $5.67. So you can calculate this in different ways. This is not the only way to do this. It is completely fine to do it in different ways. This is just the one way that I'm doing it, where I'm doing all of the steps. So $127.58. So that's how much you're actually going to pay in Montreal for that hotel. So make sure that you're paying attention to if it's HST or just PST, and then you need to put GST as well, right? HST, you don't need to do GST, but if it's just PST, you need to do both. And then accommodations, you do the same thing, but you need to times it by 4 because you're staying there for 4 nights, right? And then accommodations on the way back, same plan. So then for food, you use a daily estimate of $25 per day per person to calculate the food costs. So we have 4 people. So times 25 is equal to $100 a day. And remember, we had 5 days traveling there, 4 days there, 4 days back. 5 plus 4 is 9, plus 4 is 13. So total food is going to be 13 days times $10 per day, which is going to be equal to, $100 per day for the whole family, which is going to equal to $1,300 of food for the whole trip. And then entertainment, you will look to see what sort of, in your aisle booklet, they tell you exactly where you're going to go, and you just need to look it up. So here I found a ghost tour in Charlottetown where adults are $20 and kids are $10. So that means it's going to be $40 for the adults plus $20 for the kids to do the ghost tour. For the going to Anna Green Gables, it's $8.50 for adults. So we have 2 adults. So $8.50 times 2 is 8 times 8, or 8 times 2 is 16, plus another $1 is $17, plus youth or 13 plus are $5. So your 15-year-old is $5. Kids are free. So anybody under 15 is free. So your 10-year-old is free. And then maybe you're buying them some gifts. So I like the plush lobster. It's a souvenir. It's $7.99. And I think that my 15-year-old wants a plush lobster. And my 10-year-old wants the Suncaster catcher. So that's $15.99. And then they argue about who got spent more money on them, and it's a good day. So then you add those up, and then you have to add your tax, which is PST and GST in PI. And then you have to add up all of your costs together. So you go back and you write in your gasoline costs. You write your accommodations on the road. You write your accommodations in Charlottetown. So your accommodation on the road is there and back, right? 2 ways. You meals for your whole trip, your entertainment and souvenirs, and then you add it all up together. You decide, can you afford the trip? Is there anything you could do to make it cheaper? You have to decide what makes sense for your life. All right, so as you can see, it takes longer than an hour to do this activity because we had to rush through a lot and we didn't do a ton. So it takes longer than an hour to do this lesson. But to plan a trip, you need to consider the gas. So in terms of your travel distance and your fuel consumption and cost, your accommodations. So not to forget the taxes in your specific location. Remember, with gas, the tax is already included. It's a hidden tax. Whereas with accommodations, you need to add the tax, but you need to think about where you are. For meals, you can either do it by breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks, or you can do it by day rate. Figure that out for your group. And for your entertainment, you think about admission costs and souvenirs, what makes sense for your group of people. For your IL booklet, they don't give you the number of people, so do it for your own family. If that means it's only you, then it's only you. That's totally cool. That's your budget. That's your reality. It's totally fine to go on an adventure by yourself. If it means that you're going with a family with 6 kids, then plan it with 6 kids, because that's your reality. Okay, so single parent and 6 kids, sure, if that's what you want to do. If that's your reality, plan a trip for that and see what would make sense or what wouldn't. So hopefully you can now use Google Maps to plan those distances. It takes a bit of time. You can determine the distances involved in the travel, and you can also determine the costs of accommodation, fuel, food, and entertainment while you're vacationing. So it takes a while to plan these things. It isn't just something you can do super quick. As you saw, I couldn't do it in an hour. A shorter trip maybe, but a longer trip, it takes more than an hour. So if you have any questions, you want me to walk through the stuff, as I did have to skim through it really quickly because it took longer than I was expecting, feel free to reach out, 807-737-1488, extension 2209. Email me at bronwyn.slate@nnec.on.ca or Facebook me on at bslateWahsa. Of course, our lessons are up on YouTube, so you can go back and at least sort of go through the little pieces while you're doing your lesson and see if they help you out, if they give you enough information, even though I had to rush. I hope you have a lovely day. Thanks so much for joining me. Mwich.